Yes. Yeah. It's February 7th, 2025. Tim McKernan Show. I said to Jackson, I said, you're a prince. I said, that's what you are. You really are. You're a prince boy. But I said, here's the deal. I can tell you got things on your mind. He told me, and he told me. He didn't sleep well. I know what that's like. And he's got to do all this stuff. He hasn't packed yet, and I guess that gives him a little sweat. So I say, hey, let's do QFTA today. And I picked up an immediate read like, oh, fuck. And I said, I got a call, and I do. It's as I'm talking to you in the audience. It's 11:19, Friday, February 7th, 2025, in St. Louis. And I got a call at 12:15, so he knows I can't go full Rogan here today. But either way, he's got things he needs to do. Didn't sleep. I said, hey, I'll handle QFTA. So it's just me and you in the YouTube chat and those who have sent me emails. T. McKernan at InsideSTL.com is how you can always email in. TMCKERNAN at InsideSTL.com. I will answer anything. T. McKernan at InsideSTL.com. And if you're in the YouTube chat, now I've gotten complaints from emailers who want the emails read because there can be a lot longer than the YouTube chat. I will attempt to answer everything in the YouTube chat. So there you go. So I want to make sure I go to the emails first, and then I shall glance. Well, I'm going to make sure everything's good in the YouTube chat before I... is there anything worse than putting socks on with feet? No? Okay, so that's where we're starting there. So it seems like everything's good. Let's see. No, we're good. All right. So you can ask whatever you want in the YouTube chat. You want a longer form question, T. McKernan at InsideSTL.com. And I'd like to think I'll answer anything, TMCKERNAN at InsideSTL.com. All right, here we go. Tim and Jackson, a bit ago, I said I wanted to get serious with my golf this year. You guys gave great advice, I think. Honestly, I don't know, though, because I don't know what I'm doing. Which leads me to my question. Jackson said to be careful with watching guys on YouTube for advice. Do you have anyone you recommend as far as the online socials to follow? Thanks in advance. That comes from the YouTube chat, formerly known as Joey Vitale's Orange Scully, formerly known as Doug's Lawn Boy. Yeah, now I remember the Joey Vitale's Orange Scully, and now I realize now this person is going by the name the YouTube chat. Here's what I would tell you on this, and I don't want to narrowcast on golf unless one of us have some kind of story that would appeal to people beyond golf. But I would probably be more apt to email with you, YouTube chat / Joey Vitale's Orange Scully, and answer questions. But when it comes to it, I'm somebody who certainly plays a lot. I enjoy practicing, not even because I'm really practicing so much as I think it's minus when I'm sleeping, and even then it sometimes doesn't work. It's the only time I can shut my brain off, which isn't a real healthy way to live, but at this point, that's the way things are, and I just kind of accept it. And I'll listen to music or a podcast while I'm just hitting balls. So I'll be always screwing around with my swing, which at this point is really ill-advised. But I will see these YouTube videos, and there are so many different things they're talking about. I mean, I'm just going through it. Before you even have set up, you're looking at your target. Before you even grab the club to line it up, you're looking at your alignment. Before you even take the club back, you're looking at your grip. Then before you even get to the top of your swing, you're talking about your takeaway and what angle you're coming in. Are you shallow? Are you steep? And all these things. And then are you swinging out? Are you swinging in a loop to come in behind? And then as you're swinging out, what's your club face? It's so much, and it overwhelms you. There was one time, I think if Iggy's in the YouTube chat, he might be able to confirm this. One of the years, Iggy was my partner, and I'm like, okay, I think we can win this thing, or at least win our flight. And I'm going to go see my guy, like 3 days before the event, and it's a net event, so you got handicaps, so it's not a real thing. But when I went and saw my instructor, I went to the event, and I had so many things in my head that it just screwed me up, and I played terribly. And while people would give Iggy shit for screwing up our chances, it was me who blew it up, trust me. And then last year I played in one of those things. I'm happy to be your member guest partner, by the way. Email me, McKernan at InsideSTL.com. And I'm like, okay, all I'm going to think about is my takeaway is going to be slow. I know this guy isn't a household name, Corey Connors, that kind of slowness. And all I'm going to focus on, the only swing thought I'm going to have is that I finish my swing, as boring and simple as that is. But what that then does is, number one, it clears your mind. And number two, by making sure that you finish your swing, it also forces you to turn your body, most likely, at the target. And I played incredibly well. So this is the time of year when I mess around with my swing. We'll be in Florida here tomorrow, and I would imagine I'll play a couple rounds. You can't post scores for your handicap in Missouri at this time of year. I don't think it opens up again until March to post scores for your handicap index. But when you're in Florida or Arizona, probably portions of California and Texas, you can post a score. I would imagine I will post a score that would be much higher in February than it would be if I went and played the exact same course in June. And that just comes with not playing for a few months. So to answer your question, the YouTube chat, I would tell you this. I would stay away from the YouTube videos. And I go back to what I probably said the first time you asked, and that somebody asked Tiger Woods what his best advice would be, and that is to stay away from the YouTube instructional videos. That's not to say that everybody's a charlatan. I'm not saying that at all. It's such a case-by-case basis. Some people just are gifted with certain, whether it be hand-eye coordination, fast twitch muscles. They have experience, but they haven't played recently, or they have no experience. And therefore, when you're a YouTube instructor and you're just broadcasting to the world, you might be talking down to somebody who has greater ability, or you might be talking up to somebody who has no clue, and all it's going to do is confuse you. So my recommendation, if you really do want to improve, and I've got no vested interest in this outside of just being honest with people in the audience, is to get a lesson. And I'd be happy to connect you with people for a lesson. I wouldn't want to do that because it would be free advertising. But if you want to email me, I'd be happy to do it because I've worked with a number of instructors and I feel like I've got a good base of knowledge locally on that. I haven't worked with everybody by any means, but I would be able to recommend 3 right off the top of my head. T. McKernan at InsideSTL.com. Next email. Howdy, fellas. I was wondering, with the new iteration of the show, when it comes to the local teams, how do you determine who to follow? Is it as simple as you choose which ones you have a connection or interest in? Do you ever feel obligated to keep track or talk about a team because of the show, but you really are not interested? From my observations, it seems that the bulk of discussions center around the Cardinals and the Blues, which makes sense since those are the 2 biggest teams in our city. Next is probably followed by Missouri football, then Missouri basketball, and all but Martin on the show have a connection to that school, as well as the sponsored segment with Gabe that provides weekly discussion. It is really beyond those that I am wondering about. It seems Billiken basketball gets discussed a fair amount, but there is rarely discussion about other D1 teams such as Illinois, SIUE, Lindenwood, etc. I'm not saying you should discuss those other teams more, but why do the Billikens get more discussion than, say, Illinois? Illinois is a top 25 team and the second strongest conference that everyone predicts will make the NCAA tournament, whereas SLU is an upper-tier team in a mid-major conference, but seems unlikely to make the tournament unless they can win the A-10 tournament. Is SLU just more active on interacting with the show through Coach Schertz? Is it Martin having an interest in SLU that didn't exist before when Iggy and Plowboy were on the show? Is it as simple as Martin brings a different element to the show and his role as sports director at Channel 2, he expands the topics that are covered due to his other job? I've also wondered how much City SC might be talked about when their season starts in a few weeks. So far, there's been very little soccer talk, which I used to bristle at, but I think after considering it, I actually prefer. Although I get the impression that Martin might want to talk about City SC from time to time. I wonder what gives you that impression. I'm just curious on that. Because I don't get that indication in the slightest, but I must be missing something, maybe. In the previous version of the show, the soccer talk was quite frustrating because it was either very superficial or would lead to Doug and Iggy talking about why soccer's not popular or not understanding the game and wanting to change the rules, and then I'd just get extremely frustrated. I'd much rather not have soccer talked about at all, rather than people falling back on tired old tropes like that. Cheerio, that's from Not Caller Adam. P.S. Again, I'm enjoying the show. All right, there's a lot there. Not Caller Adam, one of the superstars of QFTA over the years. QFTA, of course, brought to you by the great James Carlton, Carlton State Farm Insurance Agents, and a loyal QFTA participant. He'll email in questions here and there, as a matter of fact, and he's online at carltoninsurance.net, 314-961-4800, and I am a client. So let me go through these things. I can give a straightforward answer. I can give a straightforward answer right out of the gate. Even though I am aware that, and I gather this is in social media bubbles where the show's talked about, and I'm grateful that they exist, even if they're negative, because people talk about the show, and that means they listen to the show. And when it's all said and done, that's great. But that now it's all blues and it's all guess, and it's just factually incorrect. Now, I'm not doing this because I'm irritated by it. I'm just doing it because I mean, why would I go along with something that isn't factually correct? Here is a situation to be crystal clear with the audience. How many guests have we had on the show that aren't sponsored, or is not a tie-in to 101 ESPN's deal with the Blues? For real, I'd be real curious on that. Like, I don't even know if you would go to. We've been on how many shows have we done now on 101? I don't know. I would say probably about 70, and I don't know if we've had 20 guests who wouldn't be sponsored guests. Now, I'm not saying that guests are bad. I'm just saying we don't have guests just to have guests. I've always found that to just be, from my personal preference, I don't think that's great radio, I guess, if you want to call it radio, but a great show. Just if you're like, oh, we can't fill the show, so we need to get somebody on. That is not my speed. It hasn't been my speed for a long time. 101 ESPN has a deal with the Blues. That at usually 8:15 on Mondays, Chris Kerber, on Tuesdays, John Kelly, on Wednesdays, Jamie Rivers, on Thursdays, Bernie Federko, and on Fridays, Joey Vitale. They're on. That's the deal. That's the deal. You can like it, you can not like it, whatever the case might be. Some people like some things, some people like other things. So you got that. Then Gabe is sponsored on Mondays and Fridays by James Carlton, the aforementioned. And as it turns out this year, to our pleasant surprise as Missouri alums, or whatever the hell I am, as a guy with 8 hours left, an attendee, Missouri basketball was good, along with Missouri football being the talk well beyond just Missouri fans this year, with back-to-back quality seasons, and certainly the 2023 team being a hell of a team. So just in general, when that gets tossed around, I'm like, okay, that's not accurate. Like, Theismann would come on because he would fuck off on the show with us, and he's a long time, kind of a running joke guest on the show when Notre Dame was good. If there's something of newsworthiness, we'll try to get guests on, but otherwise we just don't force it. So my overall premise on that is, I think one of the reasons why, the reason why the show has grown is because of advertising and return on investment for advertisers. That's just it. It's really that simple. And you can put a period at the end of the sentence. Now, of course, in order for advertisers to get return on investment, they have to be listeners, and then listeners have to go and work with the advertiser, and the advertisers have to either be able to quantify or feel like they're getting return, and it depends on the advertiser there. Some track it, some don't, some just do a feel, some just like the show, whatever the case might be. So that's always number one. It's always about dollars. But then secondarily, I think it's been because the show hasn't been like, oh, we've got to talk about this topic, we got to get a guest on just because to fill the time. Now, if you're a longtime TMA listener, you're going, well, this is a totally different show than what it was last year. I'd agree wholeheartedly. I think there's also something out there that I'm saying that it's the exact same show. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's a hell of a lot different than what's been on 101 ESPN since its beginning, and I would have a tough time believing that anybody would argue that otherwise. But TMA, as it was in 2024, wasn't what TMA was in 2019. Just like it wasn't what it was in 2014, just like it wasn't what it was in 2009, just like it wasn't what it was in 2004. So there's these different iterations. But throughout, there has been a constant, which is we don't force a topic. Nobody here, not once, whether it's been when we were on HD2 or on 101 ESPN, said, you got to talk about this or you can't talk about that. It's just not been the way it is, and so I try to set the record straight on that. With regard to Adam's email, The St. Louis University thing, I would say, is absolutely because of Josh Schertz, period. And I have said oftentimes that I think it is a mistake and hey, I'm guilty of it. I mean, hell, I've been doing television and radio in the market for 25 years, for Illinois not to get as much attention as comparable to Missouri. I think it's a mistake. It's a miss. It's not because of some kind of ethical thing, but because business. It's always about business. And from a business perspective, you have this entire region, and just because there's a river in between Missouri and Illinois, whereas there's state line road in between Missouri and Kansas, that somehow Illinois doesn't count, or that there aren't all of these people in the Metro East who are Illinois fans. Not everybody is, just like not everybody in St. Louis is a Billikens or Missouri fan. But and on top of it, Illinois was incredibly good at football this year. And, I know they're struggling recently in basketball, but they've been a top 25 team throughout. So I just think it's a miss. But I was asked this question a couple weeks ago on QFTA, and I want to go back to it because I know not everybody listens to every episode, and it takes me 15 seconds to address it. But when it comes to guests on the show, because of what I said just moments ago regarding guests, we're not going to have them on unless we want to have them on that particular day, like Jacob Kern, for example, from the Business Journal a couple days ago on that Board of Aldermen meeting, because it was newsworthy on the Rams money, unless they're sponsored. The guys on the show would rather bullshit. And by bullshit, I mean interact with the audience and talk. That's our jobs. That's what we're being paid to do, not to just ask questions in like haphazard form with a guest. Oh, we've got so-and-so coming up. Okay, I'll ask a question. All right, Martin, you ask a question. Doug, you ask a question. All right, who wants to ask the next question? I just think that's shitty radio, shitty podcasting, whatever you want to call it. And that's not what we do, and it's not what I ever want to do. And nobody here is saying, hey, now that you work at 101, that's what you got to do. And I guess no matter how many times I say that, I suppose some people will not change their minds on that or think I'm lying, whatever. It's fine. Can't do anything about it. But just for those of you who might give me the benefit of the doubt that I'm being honest, that's the case. The Blues interviews at 8:15, that's a deal with 101 ESPN and the Blues. Gabe is sponsored by James Carlton, and I'm trying to think what else, if I'm missing anything. With regard to City, we've been on, and they haven't been playing. So, I actually share your opinion on the soccer conversation. When we would have them on TMA in this studio, which is the old HD2 studio, because it gets back to like, do you like the game? Do you not like the game? If you don't like the game, that's totally cool. Plenty of people don't. But when we're having the conversation, we're not going to litigate the quality of the game. We're going to talk about whatever it is that took place on the game, as opposed to re-examine that for the most part. So Taylor Twellman was a regular on Balloon Party for the first season of the Doggies, and then the second season, they didn't have it sponsored. And they wanted to have it sponsored, of course. Any business would want to have it sponsored, but it couldn't get sponsored. Taylor gets paid, as he should. And so when it wasn't sponsored, Hubbard, as a business that is in the business of making money, just like I believe any business, was like, well, we can't have the expense if we don't have at least some form of revenue to offset the expense, and ideally some form of revenue that creates a margin, and that's why that went away. But I can assure you that when their season starts up here shortly, that we will be talking about them. It's not going to be a case of going, okay, we talked about Missouri, now let's talk about City, now let's talk about the Cardinals, now let's talk about the Blues. That's not the way that it works. What I try to gauge, and I feel like producer Joe is really good at this, going back, and it probably helps set the stage, as was the guys on the show, whether it be Martin and the Cat or Doug or Iggy or the Sea Monster or whomever, and I'm not trying to leave people out here, Jackson, whatever. Point is we have an idea of what people want to talk about. And then because of the text inbox, you have, not because of the complaints, because the complaints are omnipresent, but the activity in it. You can tell when a topic, I brought up a topic yesterday that I thought was going to have some form of interaction, whether it be from at least one person on the show or in the text inbox. And as it turned out, it just like kind of died, and I moved on right from it. And so you can kind of get an idea by the number of texts, because usually they're coming in, however many a minute. And when it slowed down, when I went to this topic, I'm like, all right, I was wrong on that one. Let's move off of it. So, there is no, hey, we got to make sure we talk about each one of these. The analogy or I don't know if analogy would be the right term, but I would say, for example, like I am interested in golf. I could go home right from here and watch all day, probably until about 7:15 Central Time, until it's too dark in Scottsdale. Watch the Waste Management. I think I talked about it of the 4 hours we were on the air, and probably about 3 hours and 20 minutes of that was actual content and not commercials. I would say that I think I talked about Alex Smalley, who I'm very high on, by the way, making a run this weekend, and I know most people have never heard of him, I know people aren't interested in it, so I'm not going to talk about it unless something substantial happened. So just because I like something, I don't necessarily talk about it unless it becomes something that the audience is engaged with, making fun of, or they just happen to be engaged with, or somebody else on the dais is engaged with. And that's kind of been the recipe for the show for the 2 decades. I think in particular, actually, probably after the first year of the show, because our initial program director, going back to 2004, wanted us to talk about stuff, and we weren't interested, and then we fortunately were able to get away from it. And I actually think that helped grow the show, in addition to, honestly, Ask Tony, I think is what kind of put the show on the map. Martin wanting to talk more City, I don't see that, but I don't know. I know that people at City want us to want to get more involved with the show themselves, so that's a good thing. And so I think when the season starts up, you will see more discussion on that. But again, it's not going to become like a soccer show because we have a soccer team. The show's about what we're in the mood to talk about. Let's see what we got. Wow, that Edmonds segment. You could do an entire QFTA on just that. Amazing stuff. Especially the Arenado McGuire nugget. Glad I got to listen to this. Thanks. That comes from James. The Edmonds interview. I'll give some backstory on that because I guess I would tell you this. I suppose it's never really an endearing way to talk, but I also. I guess I default to here's the truth. Here's what I honestly think, and my reaction to it was I'm not surprised, and so much so that I was texting with Jim on Sunday, and we hadn't texted since I think January 8th. The article, and it's February 7th as we're talking. And I was texting with him on what I guess was like February 4th, 3rd. The article comes out in the Post-Dispatch on Saturday night that he is not going to be back on the Cardinal broadcasts. Now, and I say this, and I'm truly not trying to stir the pot, I just know that I have read things about our show, about myself, about other people who I work with that I know are not true. And so once you have that, you also know that just because it's written doesn't mean that it's true or that it's 100% accurate the way it's being presented. And therefore, combining that fact with the fact that the last time I had texted with Edmonds was January 8th, and I was asking if he wanted to be on TMA as kind of a cardinal guest throughout the course of the season. Here at Hubbard, they have been wanting to put together a group of people that would kind of be our cardinal people throughout the course of the season. They said, hey, would you ask Edmonds? I said, sure. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't think he watches all the games, and I know he's down in Nashville anyway for most of the time. And when I texted him, he said, yeah, I'm probably not going to be doing the games anyway this year. So I'm like, oh, all right, whatever. Didn't really think anything of it. Don't care, and knew that it was kind of like a side job for him. It's not like he's hurting for money. So when I saw the article, I'm like, oh, I already thought he kind of knew he wasn't doing the games, so that's why I texted him, and just saying what's up, and when I texted him, hell, I could probably read it because I don't think that particular text was all of that enticing or be breaching the code, so to speak, but it was a very benign response. And he was in a really good mood, too. He's just at peace down there. Let's see. I think some people care about this. Some people won't, but whatever. Obviously, we send a lot of text. All right. I said, what's up, man? How you doing? I know we texted a few weeks ago. We were talking about you likely not doing games this year. But the article in the Post-Dispatch makes it sound like you were let go. I know that they've gotten it wrong with things on our show often. So I wanted to make sure I got your side. And he said there's no sides to share. I was trying to figure out how to tell them that I didn't want to do it anymore. And then they called me and told me basically that I probably wasn't coming back. And I told them, thank you for making my decision a lot easier. But I had no intentions of doing it anymore, and I couldn't be any happier. And then he sent me a picture of his tractors. It's Jim. This is all I do now. Been in St. Louis about 5 days in the last 6 weeks. And then I wrote back, pardon my ignorance, but are you farming now, bro? And then it's just a bunch of pictures of him and his kids on his, and he said I couldn't be happier. And one of the things that he likes is that when he goes out, and he wrote this later when we were bullshitting, is that he can go out, and he kind of lives in a small area, and people just kind of let him be. And I think initially when he got to St. Louis in 2000, I could be wrong on this, and I don't know if you'd ever acknowledge it. I think he liked the attention. And here's my reasoning. When he played for the Angels, and he was a great player with the Angels, but if you're living in Southern California and you see a baseball player, in particular an Angel and not a Dodger, you are, down low like an HD2 radio host as far as celebrity goes. So then you come here and you're a god, and he's a single guy, and, it's probably a nice situation. So, and the team's winning on top of that. So, and they got a hell of a locker room, and I knew that, as you may have heard if you were listening to Fernando Vina when he was on the show with us yesterday, that 2000 team was entertaining as fuck as far as the guys on that roster. You had a bunch of guys, either Hall of Famers or guys who'd be like the class right below near Hall of Famers, and a lot of them were veterans at that point, and they just fucked off. I mean, it was entertaining. As I said, I was 23 years old during that season, and so they just kind of hazed me. Some guys on the team, some, didn't give a shit. McGuire couldn't have cared any less. Darryl Kyle, his personality, he always was, the textbook like Bull Durham character, for lack of a better term. But then there were other guys like Eric Davis and Ray Lankford and Will Clark and Sean Dunston and Matt Morris and Dave Veers and eventually Steve Klein. He wasn't part of the 2000 team, but 2001. And you look back on, you go, my God, that room was just full of entertainment. And it was. And I think so he loved it here from the get-go. It's like, you win your first bet, you fall in love with gambling the rest of your life. His first experience in St. Louis, the team's great, it's fun, he fell in love with it. But then with a combination of, and hey, he's the one who decided to do it, or agreed to do it, for lack of a better term, doing that Real Housewives show, and then the crap that came out, and, that's another thing, things written about him in his personal life, that, may or may not be accurate, that changes what your experience is when you're out interacting with the public. And I also understand if you're not used to, which is 99% of the population, reading something about yourself or your business that or listening to something about yourself or your business that as you're listening or reading it, is actually factually inaccurate. And that is your disposition, which is his disposition, which is my disposition. But, obviously most people don't experience that, so they read things and they think that they're accurate. It doesn't matter if it's a tabloid or if it's, take your pick of whatever publication that you think is reputable. Then that changes your mindset because it changes your interactions with people. And in 2000, you didn't have social media and people using burners to snipe at them. And so I think he got to a point where he's just like, I just want to be away from this. And he's so at peace. So one of the things that he texted me when we were talking on Sunday morning was he goes, let everybody know this is it. This is the last time I'm talking about it. So if they want to hear me talk about it, It's going to be on your show. He goes, just so you know, you're the only person from St. Louis media who I've responded to. And you can tell everybody else to stop texting me because I'm not going to talk. I'm going to talk on your show, but I'm going to talk about everything. And the things he told me he was going to talk about, there was actually more. It had nothing to do with the Cardinals, by the way. It was, he talked about a little bit of it, but he didn't go full on because I think and I always thought this too, and I kind of wanted to say this to him, whether it be on the air or off the air. I'm like, man, you've been on the receiving end of some bullshit. And I understand, you don't want to engage it because, as I've said on this podcast before, never engage in anything with no upside and don't get in a public war of words with a liar. Bert Kaufman, 920, that was his counsel to me. And so, yeah, he would be doing both those things by defending himself. But I was just like, man, people think one thing about you, and it's just not. And I want to make this clear, and he'd probably be the first one to say it. It's not like he's some saint by any means. I don't know who. I'm sure as hell not a saint by any means. But a lot of the things about this guy are just not true. And the thing is, he's just like a good guy who happens to be really good at baseball, and did truly love the game and love it in a way that was so odd because it came to him so easily. And that's what La Russa said. I think after their first spring training game, he made an observation on the way that I can't remember, some random pitcher was set up on the mound, and he's like, okay, that means the pitch is going to be here. He goes, so I think I'm going to shift 2 steps to the left, and La Russa and Duncan looked at each other like, holy shit, now it explains why this guy is so good defensively. But for him, it's just intuitive. It's just a gift, and therefore he doesn't necessarily see it as something that almost every one of us would love to have because it just came so easy for him. So when I would text with him back in the day when he had a part of Inside STL, and I'd be like, hey, what are you doing? And be like, I'm on my way to work. And I thought he was like kind of joking because his way to work was driving down 40 to go to Busch Stadium. And I'm like, work, yeah, right. And he goes, what? But that's just how he is. Like the sense of humor on TMA that is ball busting and giving each other shit and taking shit and the whole thing, that's not his sense of humor. It's just not it's not his personality. So he doesn't catch certain things that we're fucking around about, or if people are fucking around with him, like the half shirt, he'd get really defend. Like, why are they talking about my half shirt? What the fuck, It's just not, it's not his person, but he's a good guy. But at the same time, he kind of doesn't care. But then after a while, then it got to him. And so I think what you heard on Monday on TMA with that interview was a guy who's like, okay, fuck it, I've had enough, and I'm gonna air it out. So that's what you heard. I had a feeling that was going to happen, so much so that I knew that Jackson was sick. You'd been dealing with strep throat going back to Thursday. He wasn't going to be in on Monday. God bless Chairman Kurt. Chairman Kurt comes in, and I know he's going to be running the board, but it's not what he does. It's not his full-time gig. And I texted Tommy Mattern, who runs programming here at Hubbard, and Mike Ryder, who's the executive producer for 101 ESPN. I said, hey, after texting with Edmonds, I think he's really going to, let some things off his chest about a bunch of things, but certainly the Cardinals. I never know if that's going to happen, but I was pretty confident it was going to happen. He was saying, hey, make sure we have a half hour to go, which is why I made sure to go to break a bunch early between 7 and 7:45 on Monday to make sure we had cleared that runway. And then I had a feeling that people would want to talk about it afterwards, so we cleared guests. Jacob Kern was going to join us on Monday. I texted him and I said, hey, I think Tuesday would probably be better because I had a feeling the Edmonds thing was going to take off. I didn't know what he was going to say. I just knew that he was loaded for bear. And so, I said, hey, I think that this is going to be something that, is you're going to want to have clips ready for our show to play later on and then the other shows throughout the day, because I have a feeling this is going to be a topic. Now, I've had that happen before with another guest, and it was Quinn Snyder. Now, this is going back 2 decades, but Quinn Snyder and I had a conversation. And it was whereas Edmonds and I have a friendship, and my kids have hung out with his kids, and he owned a part of Inside STL years ago. Quinn Snyder and I, we had a rapport, but it wasn't like it was a friendship at all. And following the 2003 Missouri loss to Marquette and Dwayne Wade in the NCAA tournament, I went down to Columbia to kind of do a season wrap-up with him at the Hearn Center, which is still there, but it's not where they play any longer, of course. And the whole time, man, I'm doing the interview. It's a TV interview, and he's like leaning in. And I'm like, man, this guy, and he's kind of giving me short, terse answers. And I'm like, this guy, like, something's up, you know? And I've known him going back to when he was hired in '99 and would kind of see him. And, you know, I viewed him as a peer, but shit, he was 10 years older than me, so maybe I shouldn't have viewed him as a peer. But I'm like, oh man, this guy's a young guy, and we would, you know, say shit, and I could always kind of tell, like, we thought we were a hell of a lot more amusing than he did, which has, I think, also been a common theme of TMA. And I'm like, he's fucking pissed at me. And we get done with the interview, and he kind of goes off quickly, and then he comes back, and he's like charging at me. And I want to make it clear, like, not but like he's walking at me with a purpose, not to fight, but he's pissed. And he goes, "Do you say my media relations team keeps me away from you guys? Is that what you're saying?" And I'm like, wasn't planning on talking about it, but since you want to talk about it, yeah. And in hindsight, I'm only 26, I guess, kind of not within the range. Like at this age, I'd be more than happy to go, but at 26, a little different program. And I'm going, yeah. I said, yeah, Missouri media relations are notorious in St. Louis and Kansas City for being difficult to deal with. And as a guy who happens to be somebody who went to school here and a fan, I don't think you guys do yourselves any services by making it as difficult as you do to have access to the teams. Especially when, in the case of St. Louis at the time, you had 3 teams, all 3 of whom were good at that time. And in Kansas City, you had 2 teams. So when it's 2 hours, and even at that time, it wasn't easy to get a photographer to go down to shoot video, and then to take a reporter 2 hours, you know, to head down there and then to drive back. It's not easy to get to Columbia to get the coverage. And then people in Columbia would bitch about a lack of coverage for Missouri. Well, here's one of the reasons. You guys aren't accessible. And he's pissed. And we're going back and forth, and he's got one or two of the media relations guys with him, both of whom I know. But I'm like, okay, you can come at me. I mean, I'm going to tell you, we're not on the air or anything. We'll talk this over. So like a day or two later, I don't know how it happened. I know it was on a cell phone, but it was pre-iPhone. And I certainly don't think I had his number. But I was working at KMOV, and I'm in front of KMOV, which at the time was at One Memorial Drive, right across from the Arch, just to the east, or west of the Arch, excuse me, in downtown. And somehow Quinn and I are on the phone. And again, this is a different deal than the Edmonds situation, because I don't have I have a rapport with Quinn, but the last time we had seen each other a few days earlier, we're, you know, going after each other. And from that point, downtown, all the way until I get back to my place, and I lived in the Moorlands, in Clayton at that time, in a little condo in Clayton in 2003, I swear we were on the phone. I guess, you know, it's traffic. You drive through 40, and the traffic at that time, probably 25 minutes, and I might have spoken for 2 minutes. And it's Quinn, you know, we set our differences aside on the whole thing, and he wanted to give me his perspective. And his perspective was, he's been in the crosshairs of the media since he got here. He's the guy replacing Norm Stewart. He hasn't gotten a fair shake. St. Louis, or people in St. Louis out to get him. And then he started naming a bunch of college basketball coaches, every single name, if I were to give them, everybody listening to this or watching this would recognize. He goes, they don't catch this shit. I catch this shit. He's just fired up. And I go, I got to tell you, man, I said, I don't give a fuck if it's my show or not. But I think it would be good if you know, told your side of things, whether it be with us or somewhere else, so people hear this passion and your side of the story. And at the time, TMA wasn't around. I was doing a show with Frank Cusimano, and he said, you know what, I'll come on the show and I'm going to talk about it. I go, all right, God bless. And he was loaded for bear. So I tell this story because it's the same thing that when I was texting with Edmonds on Sunday, I'm like, this could wind up being really huge, but I didn't want to post about it on social media because I'm like, number one, I don't know, maybe he'll decide against it, maybe two, you know, he won't say everything that he was saying he was going to say. And so I just am like, okay, Jim Edmonds is going to join us coming up at some point. And I didn't know exactly what time it would be. And then he texted me at 7:15. I'm like, all right, we'll do it, here at 7:45. I knew it was going to be early in the show. When Quinn came on with me and Frank, he wound up, as far as what I thought it was going to be and what he had indicated it was going to be, it was like a tenth of that, if that. But he did say something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing, and it's been 22 years at this point, almost 22 years exactly, because it was March of 2003 when they lost to D. Wade and Marquette in overtime in the second round. He said something about, everybody thinks all I get here is McDonald's high school All-Americans, and if you look at it, we've only gotten one, and there were some people associated with St. Louis basketball listening to that who were furious that he didn't praise Jimmy McKinney. And so Quinn caught a bunch of hell for that interview, even though he had only given about 10% of what he said he was going to talk about. And I feel like we talked later that night or the next day, and he's like, fuck it, man. He goes, I even tempered my comments. And I'm still catching shit. He goes, I can't win, so fuck it. I'm just done with it. I'm just done even trying with the media. Because even when I say something that is true, which was true, Trayvon Bryant was his only McDonald's high school All-American at that time. He caught a bunch of shit. And he's like, fuck it. I'm not even going to bother with it anymore. So the reason I tell that story is because I didn't know if, like, when I was texting with Edmonds at like 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, if he was going to wake up the next day and be like, nah, I don't want to get into it, or temper his comments. So I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew what he had texted me because I knew similarly what Quinn Snyder had said 2 decades ago in an interview that I thought was going to be a huge deal, but it wound up not being because he had decided to temper his comments. Then he wound up. I don't think, some people have asked me DMs, emails about Jim having buyer's remorse and that. I don't think so at all. And here's the deal. Money is freeing. He didn't need, that was one of the things that I saw. He's just bitter that he got fired. I'm like, well, number one, I know he was planning on leaving anyway, so that's one thing. And then number two, think about it. All you have to do is look it up on Baseball Reference, how much money the guy made. And then I know some people go, yeah, but he's gotten divorced a bunch of times because he can't keep his dick in his pants, right? Fuck him. But, even with that, the guy's still doing fine. Plus, he's been successful in some other businesses. He doesn't need what he was making from FanDuel, at all. And he wasn't going to do it anyway. He just wanted to get out of town so he could kind of have some peace for him, and he's got some young kids. So, anyway, there it is. That's my perspective. John Score is writing via an email. It seems to me that maybe Martin was annoyed with Edmonds after his rant. What is your take on it, and how did it make you feel? I do not think that's the case. Martin and I were texting about it. Here's what I would say about it. If like Jim were to ask me what did I think of the interview, he did text me like 5 minutes after the interview, and he said, I hope your listeners enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. He goes, but as for people who are the critics, I really don't give a fuck. But I don't think you ever do yourself any favors when you bitch about the guys behind the scenes on a broadcast, or the ladies behind the scenes on a broadcast, even if there may be truth to it. And I'm not saying there is. I'm not involved with the broadcast. It's one of those things it's a zero upside play. It just doesn't play well. You never can go wrong with praise and take your pick of whomever, and we can think of all of our quote-unquote protected classes. You can never go wrong. Some might call it virtue signaling. It's an applause line. It's like Mankind in the WWE back in the day. It's so great to be here in St. Louis. Of course, you're going to get cheers. It's so great to have these people who are supporters. We thank you for all the applause lines. Wonderful. Some would say it's just polite. God bless. Whatever. But then at the same time, on the other side of it, you're never going to go well. It's not going to go well when you're complaining about like the people behind the scenes on a broadcast. It just didn't. And then the post-dispatch thing, I think people could resonate with that, but I think he got into the thing with his pool at his place in Frontenac, and as you can imagine. But see, with Jim, it's not like he's saying it as a brag. That's just his life, and it has been his life for 30 years, having all that, money, but he didn't realize that ain't going to play well. That the articles about the fencing on his pool at his, house that's listed for whatever it's listed for in Frontenac. And then there was another thing that I'm like, okay, if you could have just stuck to the Cardinals, then it probably would have been, would have received a higher approval rating. But here's the thing. He didn't give a fuck. He's like, this is what's going on. This is what I think. And people don't like it. I don't really care. They're going to hear about it. And so, Martin was not annoyed at all. None of us were. And let's see, what's my take on it? I just gave you my take on it. How did it make me feel? I feel like that's a guy who I've gotten to know, who I know is a good guy who has had some things written about him that aren't true. And I guess part of me is probably projecting some of the shit that I feel. Granted, it's like a 1/1,000,000th, and to know what that's like, and then also to kind of know some of the people involved with it, and go, okay, if only you knew. But you know this guy because he played center field for the Cardinals and won a World Series here and had famous moments in the 2004 NLCS, and then you read things that are titillating, and you think they're true, and I understand that, but God, if you knew, but it's not my place to get involved in that. So I liked, for his sake, that he was able to get off his chest, even though he certainly didn't say everything regarding all of those situations. And I know for the most part, probably everybody who went into it liking Jim Edmonds still liked Jim Edmonds, and the people who didn't like Jim Edmonds probably came out of it not liking Jim Edmonds. It's just a matter of, do you not like the Cardinals right now more than you don't like Jim Edmonds? And therefore, if that's the case, then the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So anyway, there you go. All right, it's 12:05. And I need to land the plane here. But I will take a look at the YouTube chat where 63 friends are gathered. And let me see if I can answer any questions. Here comes Jackson Burkett. Here comes Jackson. Jackson, have you been able to tend to all of your responsibilities? Ladies and gentlemen, from Horton Watkins, Jackson Burkett.
Yeah, taking care of a lot of stuff that I need to do. So
you feeling good now?
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
Good. And we know, this is great news. Maybe people will care, maybe they won't. But for me and you, and if you're a listener of TMA, and I know you can't publicly acknowledge that you're a fan of the show right now, maybe that'll change at some point. But if you're a listener of TMA and privately you're like, oh, I kind of really like the show, next week, Doty's coming, and that means more to anybody than Jackson. Doty's, what would you say his responsibility is?
An engineer.
Yeah, he's an engineer. And he also cares so much that what that does is we go from me, Martin, and Doug, who have no clue on any of the tech stuff, and then Jackson, God bless him, who, knows more than we do, but still, it's limited in comparison to an engineer. Now you got a guy who is going down there and going to be there for at the very least Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to show you how to set it up in case he's not there for Thursday and Friday for both the YouTube and the radio/podcast broadcast of TMA from spring training. That's huge.
So huge. I mean, really.
I think that's causing you some of the stress. Did that cause you to not sleep well last night, which is why you weren't feeling great this morning?
No. Because I knew we were going to have something.
You had morning wood you couldn't put down.
No. I'm usually able to fire right through that.
Wow. Vivid.
Yeah, well. No, it's huge. Massive weight off my shoulder. And a literal massive weight. I don't have to carry the equipment down.
How about that?
It's huge.
That's huge.
I'll have to bring it back, but it's fine.
So you can bring your golf clubs.
Golf clubs are coming. Oh, yeah.
There will be ball striking. Got the Super Bowl party at your guys' place on Sunday.
It's going to be fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All four of us kind of just like breaking it all down. Your wife will be there. It'll be great.
Yeah. Is it going to be awkward with her there?
Not at all.
Because we won't be able to have all the ladies that we usually will pick up tomorrow night.
Right.
Miami, Lauderdale area.
Right.
Who want to drive up to the...
Tim was going to bring chicken wings, That's what he was going to bring.
That's my code name for ass from Rachel's. Let's see. Hey, Tim, as we approach the 24th anniversary of Dale Earnhardt's death at the 2001 Daytona 500, I was wondering what you remember is the most shocking sports story you witnessed unfold. What do you think on that? That's a nice question. I thought it was going to be an auto racing question, and I was going to...
Defer to Charlie Marlowe.
But
the Sandusky stuff really was... That was fucking wild.
Yeah,
Really
I guess
frustrating.
if it's local, it's always. I mean, this is such a crutch, and it kind of was sports, but it kind of wasn't. Is the OJ thing? I mean, I happened to be at the Cardinals game
Yeah.
that night when that all happened. I had just graduated from high school, and so we were at the game. Cardinals sucked in '94. I think we all knew a strike was coming anyway, and we just left and went back to buddy's house, parents' house, of course. And just like, holy shit. I'm just like expected him to kill himself. That's what we were watching.
Do you think a story can captivate America like the OJ thing did?
Sure.
Like to that level? Like I think like J6 is one thing, but that was like so isolated. Like in terms of like
What was one thing?
January 6th. Like I think everyone was glued to their TV that day. But
It's interesting that you used January 6th. Because to me, like January 6th was certainly significant, but like for me, it's September 11th.
Sure.
You know, but I realize you also were
Right.
You know,
I was also using January 6th as a little more like modern, like
right
just
in
a
this
couple
media
years.
time. Yeah, I mean, other than whatever.
Right.
Yes, I do. I actually think it can be greater than, and by greater I mean the scope
Got it.
can be greater than because of social media.
Yeah,
the accuracy of the reporting will absolutely not be accuracy. There's an indirect correlation with that.
Right.
The larger a story, the more there's an indirect correlation with the accuracy of because no matter what, one person's going to be reporting one thing and then another one's because they're going to turn it into a political thing and it becomes a hillbilly festival. But with the OJ thing, sports-wise, I'm trying to think locally. Let me see if anybody's got anything in the YouTube chat. Kobe.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Magic Johnson with the HIV announcement. That's a nice play. Brandon Baker, tip of the cap. John scores on Kobe. That's a great play. In both those cases, I can picture exactly where I was. Kobe 5 years ago, I was down at the aquarium at Union Station. What are the chances? But that's where I was with my wife and my son, since our other son wasn't born yet. And I was on my way home from high school on the Magic Johnson announcement. Yeah. Locally, Mark McGuire retiring via fax, I know sounds fucking nuts, but I was working with Doug and Steve Savard at Sports Sunday when that happened. I think it was a Sunday night. I mean, it's like drops down 3 categories. But recently, Mike Schilt getting fired, that was a shocking thing.
Of like the last 5
years.
years.
It's not up there with OJ and all these things, but
I do remember where I was.
Payne Stewart's a nice play. Daryl Kyle, that's a great one. John scores. Brutal, of course. Oscar Taveras, yes, absolutely. Good calls. Great answers. Nicely done, tunneling gerbil with the question.
I will say just, I know certainly some heavier topics just came in, but on the Schilt thing, and we just brought up Charlie Marlowe and auto racing. I remember we were at KFNS during the Mike Schilt situation. It was in the afternoon. I remember listening. I had KFNS on in my car, and poor Charlie during that time was like interviewing some Mizzou guest who was in the middle of a really long answer, and I could basically hear in the background Charlie like, "Shit, they just fired Schilt. Like, how do we get this guy off our hair right now?"
So that's a tough spot when you
really
have that happen.
Spot.
I mean, that's a tough spot. Let me see if I got anything else. Otherwise, let's see. Either way, my guy for my call at 12:15 already called me, so I got to call him back. And then we're heading to Jupetown.
Are you on the same flight as me and Doug?
Yeah.
Oh, nice, beautiful.
Stop over in Charlotte. You're gonna get some Bobcats merch.
Yeah, I'll get some throwback Bobcats merch.
Nice.
Yeah, and some Bojangles. You ever had Bojangles? Chicken place?
Sure. I don't know if I've had it. I'm familiar with it.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Serve it on a paper plate. I like that.
You like that?
Fish fry.
I was communicating with somebody about the restaurants that we're going to hit, and I'm like, oh, shit, I've listed 7. We only have 6 nights there. And we really only have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
For great things about leftovers.
Leftovers was one that I mentioned.
Okay.
How'd you hear about that? Was that me talking about it?
Either you or somebody when I was living down there. They said leftovers.
Leftovers is outstanding. Long wait. I think we'll go to Restoration Rooftop for my wife's birthday, which is Thursday. Leftovers, brass ring for the wings.
Yeah.
Hog snappers, guanabanas. And then at some point, I never eat pancakes. Never. I mean, it's just not, you know.
It's a heavy breakfast.
But Juno Beach Cafe.
Okay.
Which closes at 2.
You guys talked about that.
And I mean, it's just, now I will feel awful within like 20 minutes of eating it, but it's unbelievable. Like a lot of the guys, you know, Justin Thomas and Fowler, Ricky Fowler live right around there. I remember Max Scherzer when maybe he still lives there. they'd post pictures from Juno Beach Cafe, and it's unbelievable. It's a brutal wait for those of you who are going down to spring training. It's right on US 1 and Donald Ross, if I'm not mistaken. So it's only like a, I don't know, 5 to 10 minute drive from the Cardinals ballpark. And it's close to where you boys are staying.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
You in a good headspace?
Oh, yeah.
You're in a better headspace than you were during TMA?
Yeah, I just, it's anytime you don't sleep well.
I know. Guys, pancakes are like eating a mouthful of cement. That's from Mark M.
Yeah, not my favorite of the breakfast treats. I'm a French toast guy.
I'll take some blueberry pan cans, if you please.
Does it make you
Short
feel-
stack, don't mind.
Does it feel better if you call them flapjacks?
No. And my wife always goes, well, I think I'll take a short stack of those blueberry flapjacks. That's how I'll order it.
It is. It's folksy. It's folksy.
And I am,
Yeah, you are
by
folksy.
definition, folksy. Let's see. The D-Gen from Jeffco says he's taking notes. Definitely not for stalking purposes. Is he going to be? Omelet is the go-to. That's from John Scores. He might be talking about breakfast. That's fine. But I'm just telling you, Juno Beach Cafe, it's the pancakes. And they will, it's like fungo in his wings. I have no idea what's in the wing sauce.
Right.
And I would do anything to find out what they put in their If they did, I'd balloon up because I eat pancakes all the time. I don't know what it is. I think it's just one simple, like, little ingredient, but God almighty, so good. And then you think about the maple syrup and just like, it's like you're just injecting calories and carbohydrates and sugar in.
That's why I like with breakfast, I'm an egg dish guy, because if I'm going to load up on calories, at least have some like protein and something. Like when you just load up on pancakes, that's just like eating cake for breakfast.
It is,
it's
but with syrup on it.
Yeah. Sugary.
What the fuck were we doing 50 years ago?
But it was either, like, think of your options. It was like cereal, which even before like sugary cereal is not a lot there from a nutrition standpoint. Pancakes, a bunch of eggs, like, which are high in cholesterol, and
this and a banana will be all I have until pizza and my protein shake.
Yeah. What's pizza for tonight?
That's a good question.
Dewey's? It smells like Dewey's.
I did Dewey's last week, so probably wouldn't be.
South side then?
Could. I don't know. I'm in the simulator this afternoon, so I'll be right at 44. So I could get that pizza go.
It's true.
I got to get some work in, especially if we're going to be playing. What are we doing? $100 a hole? Is that what we're playing?
Yeah, probably at least
minimum. Doug's playing. I don't think Martin's bringing clubs.
Yeah, he'll be. He got 2 Foxworks to do.
I don't know Anna Marie doesn't play. She wouldn't want to be out there anyway.
Right. Well, because she knows the talent that'll be out there.
Did you just say Italian?
No.
Oh, the talent.
Yeah.
No, because she puts this fucking oil on when she goes. She sits by the pool, like, and puts oil on. I want to make a bunch of Italian slurs, but I don't think I can, even though my wife's Italian, and I guess by definition, my children, even those McKernans, are part Italian.
Right.
She's just horrified my side of the family and horrified her side of the family. You know, the tension between the Italians and Irish still going on.
You guys are a real Romeo and Juliet.
It's Montague's Capulets.
Yeah, bingo.
Somebody's suggesting Uncle Leo's, and that's a great play, Allie Dub. I might go that route. There was one that I saw from the Hunchback of Von Castle. Will the Dotem be making a comeback in 2025? The course has been picked out. The dates have been picked out. As far as the announcements, I yield to the powers that be on that. But yes, let's see. I'm not going down to Jupiter due to Colts OTAs or something. But Tim, could you let me know which table you sat at so I know where to sit when I do make it down there? Thanks. That's from Brian Henshin.
For sure, Brian.
St. Gabe's on the road to MQP in Webster. Who you got? St. Gabe's is sitting at -3.5. I'll take, that's from the Hampton Hornet. And I got to take St. Gabriel's. And what about St. Gabriel's versus St. Gabriel's tonight?
It's odd. I get that. I guess you have multiple teams. It's good that
it's the B team too.
A grade school has 3 different full basketball teams.
Yep.
It's impressive. I mean, how many kids are in a class?
I mean, 50, I think.
So does every boy play
Well, I
basketball?
think what happens, I could be off the mark, because this is what's the case at my child's school, is you have kids who go to the public schools and then they play on whatever parish area they live in.
Right, gotcha.
Makes sense. So I think that's what, I mean, that's certainly what's going on for I think around in the county. I don't know if that's the case in the city, like we had, when I was growing up in the neighborhood, Word of Life's a Lutheran school right on the other side of the park, Francis Park, and a number of kids, some of whom were great players, were on St. Gabriel teams because Word of Life didn't have enough kids to have their own teams. So anyway.
Gotcha.
But what's it going to be like tomorrow night at St. Gabriel's at the Stitz? When St. Gabriel's and they turn off all the lights and the spotlight's on you
Alan
at
Parsons
12 or
Project.
13 and the Alan Parsons Project starts playing and you got a packed gymnasium of at least 70 people.
Any of them had any Busch beer at that point?
And you're going up against what apparently is the greatest seventh grader Cal Kennedy's ever seen.
If you have a kid,
Bryson Young from Loyola.
if you have a kid who can shoot the rock like apparently this kid has, then the other team doesn't stand much of a chance.
Holy shit.
The kids don't understand the closing out.
Yeah, he was texting me. He goes, for real, I've been watching for decades up here. I don't know if I've ever seen a better player than this kid. Because candidly, usually the peak of somebody's existence at the St. Gabriel basketball tournament in their basketball career is the St. Gabriel basketball tournament. There aren't a lot who go on to play high school ball. I think we might have an exception here with this one. So remember that name. And also, I forgot Rocco's Tacos.
Oh yeah,
Taco
right,
Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
Doug, they make the guacamole table side.
Ooh.
You didn't care. Yeah. Maybe I'll live stream that. You gonna be live streaming from your Airbnb?
I'm sure at one point we'll do
I would
some sort
hate that, so I'm glad I'm not there.
I mean, if Martin wants to, Martin likes doing stuff. You know, he likes to get weird, so he might. And Doug's always down, especially if we go for a soak. I'm serious about going for a soak. I'm getting a.
You're gonna be in the hot tub.
I like a hot tub.
All right.
Just to enjoy myself.
You and Doug are gonna be in a hot tub drinking boat drinks tomorrow night.
It's just gonna be me and him. I don't know what we're gonna get into.
Sounds hot, man.
I plan.
I'm jealous.
There's a hammock.
might leave my wife behind.
Yeah. Hey, sorry. I'm gonna go hang out with Doug and Jackson
In the hot tub.
soaking in.
All right, time for us to go. We'll talk to you in Jupiter, Florida on Monday for Jackson Bedford. Thank you to our sponsors, James Carlton, CarltonInsurance.net. Mark Hanna, he's online at evergreenstl.com. Seth Goldcamp, Design Air Heating and Cooling. He's online at designerservice.com. You can always send in questions. Team McKernan inside STL.com. You like the merch? TMASTLshop.com. Anything I'm leaving out? I don't think so. I think that's going to do it. Now we got to go. Well, yeah, check them out. Jackson's got them on the camera. They really are good. I mean, obviously, I'm wearing them. I wouldn't wear them if I thought they were the suck. TMASTLshop.com is where you can get them all in the hoodies, and Jackson's got the stocking. We got to go. Bye.